presentation in Stage 23 will begin in just a few moments. But before we begin, here are a few reminders. For the comfort and safety of those around you, remain seated during the presentation, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the theater. And please, supervise your children. Permanecer sentados. Eating and drinking are permitted, but we ask that you treat our theater as you would your own living room. On second thought, please deposit all trash in the waste bins. Thank you. As a courtesy to our presenters and everyone else in the theater, refrain from flash photography and turn off or silence your cell phones. Also, we ask that there be no texting during the presentation. The texting lamp is out. And now, Stage 23 and Walt Disney Imagineering are pleased to present more of the wonderful world of vintage Disneyland and Walt Disney World 2. Please welcome Imagineer Tony Baxter.
A dear friend of mine, Ed Holman, who's been responsible for putting all this together, well, he's no longer with the Disney company. And so we suddenly realized, how are we going to create something new for you? And I thought, well, maybe I could share with you the Candidacy Fair that you heard a little bit with George Calagridis and Tom Staggs. They loved that idea, and they said, well, let's put it in the main show. So now, once again, we were left with what are we going to do? And I turned to a good friend of mine, and I want him to come on out here. He's going to do this with me tonight. Josh Shipley. And, Josh put in 2 all-nighters for these folks to pull this off to get the new footage in this. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. So, nudge me if I start all. Yeah, right. All right, so I have 4. We're literally packing this thing. So you're going to get like 55 minutes of footage, which leaves me 5 minutes to talk. So I think I already used up 2 of those. What we got here first is something that was shown on TV, so it's a little bit of a cheat, but I think you'll enjoy it because it's Winston Hibbler, 10 days before the park opened, taking on a tour, and all the footage you're going to see in black and white is what all of this footage we're going to show you today was recorded for. It was for the use on the television show. So I think it'll give you good context to start things off and show you just exactly what Walt had in mind with doing all these crazy recording sessions. So, we're going to get to sit here and not talk for about 14 minutes. So let's go ahead and start with a progress report, I think 10 days before the opening of Disneyland in black and white.
And now, here's Winston Hibbler to take you on a behind-the-scenes tour of Disneyland.
Right from the start, we had our dreams pretty well in hand. And of course, the best starting point is the old reliable drawing board, that magical borderline where dreams cross over from the misty land of imagination into the modern world of reality. Once the ideas were laid out on the drawing board, we started to break them down into working parts. Creating a design is one thing, making it work mechanically, surely, safely is another. Our engineers pored over the sketches, analyzed the problems, and made the models. Little models, medium-sized models, and life-size models. On our test stage, several of the planned rides were reproduced in full scale. Here's a test model of Peter Pan's famous pirate ship as it will swoop through the London skies, powered not by pixie dust, but by a sturdy monorail. Across the studio street, on the tank stage we built for the submarine in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, our monorail system went underwater. To properly control the action of the mechanical alligators and hippos that rise out of the water, we had to time the course and the speed of the boat exactly. Inside Stage 3, nearby, where only a little while back Davy Crockett was battling the soldiers of General Santa Anna, we started construction on a 105-foot American riverboat, the stern-wheeler Mark Twain. Since the deck slopes from one end to the other, each piece of wood had to be individually cut and fitted. To make sure it was completely authentic, we called in as supervisor a Mississippi riverboat captain who had spent a lifetime running just such a boat. Constructing such a large boat inside a building 50 miles from water caused a lot of raised eyebrows. But unlike the fellow who built a boat in his basement and couldn't get it out, we had a plan. If anyone happened to look into the windows of our staff shop next door, they might well wonder what kind of a business we were really in. Here the mechanical creatures for our Adventureland jungle were being given form. The sculptors and technicians who had built our giant squid for 20,000 leagues were creating our plastic zoo. Now they had turned their skill to smaller but no less exacting subjects. Many new plastic materials came to our aid in the creation of the jungle beasts. To people our jungle world with lifelike natives, our craftsmen performed the most difficult of all molding processes, the actual duplication of the human body. A professional model of imposing physique was chosen and covered with plaster of Paris. In order to obtain a satisfactory mold and yet not endanger our subject, the plaster craftsman had to know the precise moment to pull it apart. The hero of the hour was our model. Although the plaster got warmer and warmer as it hardened, he remained under the circumstances cool and collected. On stage 2 across the street, where a short while ago Captain Nemo held his captives in the submarine Nautilus, the whir of power machinery replaced the call of camera, action. For here, we were building 5/8 scale railroad cars to run on Disneyland's own narrow gauge line, the Disneyland and Santa Fe. When you board one of these coaches and circle the park on the 3/4 mile trip, you'll have an old-fashioned but easy-riding view of all 4 realms of Disneyland. But Disneyland just wouldn't be complete without another type of train, Casey Jr., designed primarily for our younger visitors. Built to take steep hills like a roller coaster, it's one of the few trains engineered that will take a 40% grade in complete safety. On the studio back lot, wagon makers were reviving the nearly forgotten art of building stagecoaches, surreys, buggies, buckboards, and Conestoga wagons. These will provide transportation around the park and will, we hope, ease the age-old problem of aching feet. Close by, another craft was being revived, the art of the wheelwright. It takes a lot of skill and plenty of practice to heat a metal wheel rim to the exact temperature, then fit and cool it without scorching the wood. Of course, the traditional colleague of the wagon maker and the wheelwright is the harness maker. But we discovered this skill had well nigh disappeared with high-button shoes. So, like other studio craftsmen, he had to teach himself an all-but-forgotten art. To pull our 3/4 scale stagecoaches, covered wagons, and horse-drawn streetcars, we needed scaled-down animals. Shetland ponies and Corsican donkeys were the answer. When they arrived from distant corners of the world, they took up quarters next to the harness shop. There weren't enough of them, so we went into the breeding farm business. But horses for Disneyland are of several breeds. For like Pinocchio, some are made of wood. Of course, we mean horses for the carousel. The problem of carving merry-go-round horses really stumped us. After many months of searching, we finally rounded up enough of the antique hand-carved type to fill our carousel and run 4 abreast. Altogether, they add up to 72. Then began a reconditioning process and a reshaping of the legs to make them all jumpers in keeping with our King Arthur design. Being forced to obtain them from several sources, we happily discovered they all had different faces. Each was a distinct individual. At Disneyland, fact and fantasy often go hand in hand. In a darkened corner of our test stage, an exact replica of the moon was being modeled. The moon that was to be the destination of our Tomorrowland rocket trip. Our studio sculptor was aided by Roger Hayward, a distinguished expert on astronomical matters. Close by, one of our studio artists was painting a miniature model of what was to be our cyclorama. When completed in full scale, it will be seen in Tomorrowland and will give the illusion of a panoramic view of America as seen from a space station, traveling in an orbit 500 miles above the Earth. The studio is becoming a little crowded now, and so to speed things up, we assigned some of the work to outside companies. In Wilmington, California, construction was going forward on 2 steam locomotives, vintage of 1900, probably the last of their type ever to be built in the United States. At a shipyard in nearby San Pedro, the wheels of progress rolled backwards to 1895. In the midst of the latest in shipbuilding equipment, and with the most modern methods, we were building the hull of our old-fashioned stern-wheeler. In nearby Newport, we were building and assembling miniature Autopia racing cars. These will speed along the Tomorrowland Freeway. Specially designed and built with a frame of steel tubing and a fiberglass body, each of these cars will have its own 1-cylinder, 6.5 horsepower motor. A most difficult problem was to build them to fit the varying sizes of growing youngsters. We finally agreed on 2 gas pedals, a close one for the smaller children, and one more distant for the older type youngster, say the 16 to 60 variety. And to give it that authentic real-life feeling, our freeway will be patrolled by miniature police cars. Near at hand in Costa Mesa, we were working on the Explorer's launches, destined to fly through many tropic waters on our exotic Adventureland voyage. Here, as in many other problems we encountered in building Disneyland, modern plastic materials came to the rescue. For these boats are molded of fiberglass. By using these latest boat-building techniques, we were able to make them sturdier and safer than with conventional materials. Back at the studio, the working models of our rides had been perfected, and we were well into construction on the real thing. Peter Pan's pirate ship needed only finishing touches to carry us over London, through the first star to the right, down the glide path of a moonbeam on your trip to Neverland. Mr. Toad's 1903 car of Wind in the Willows fame needed only wheels, its final paint job, and its electric motor to carry passengers on a careening ride through Toad Hall and the English countryside. Here the scenic backgrounds are being prepared by our studio artists. Over in the drapery department, feminine craftsmen joined in the finishing touches. Drapes for the stage of the old-time dance hall in Frontierland. Fireproof curtains made of spun glass for the restaurants. Old-fashioned striped awnings for Main Street. A canopy for the King Arthur Carousel. And 1,001 other things made of fabric needed to complete the job. On stage 3, the superstructure of the stern wheeler had now reached the assembly stage. As section after section was pulled into place, and the proud Mark Twain lifted its head higher and higher into the air, you could almost hear the faraway echo of the boat whistles. Now, this question as to whether or not we could get the boat out of the stage, well, we fooled nearly everyone, for it was designed to come apart in sections for shipping. By now, all over the studio, hammers and saws were quickly being replaced by paint and brushes, for the deadline was drawing near. The hurry up, paint up, finish up campaign began in earnest. Ever wonder how you paint a straight line on a round wheel? Well, here's how it's done. Like our many other projects, the Santa Fe and Disneyland Railroad was feeling the effects of the final push. It needed only a few letters of recommendation from a dozen sign painters, and the installation of its trucks and a few other accessories to be ready for his trial run. At this point, we felt much like our friend the beaver in the picture Lady and the Tramp. It's not so much the work as the doggone hauling. We now began the job of moving Disneyland to Disneyland. For the next few weeks, as far as we were concerned, all roads led to Disneyland. At Bar Boulevard, our trucks completed the first leg of the trip and turned onto the Hollywood Freeway. From here, straight on to Disneyland, it was a breeze. It's often said that the Los Angeles drivers are a hardy breed. They're used to almost everything. But when a man's missed his coffee and is late for work, a boxcar rolling down the freeway can be quite a surprise. To the thousands of Los Angeles motorists who travel the freeways daily, this view of the Los Angeles City Hall is a familiar landmark. Once past downtown Los Angeles, we swing onto the Santa Ana Freeway, toward the city of Anaheim. This is probably the only time that Disneyland and Santa Fe will roll beneath the tracks of its big brother, the Super Chief. As we turn off the freeway onto Harbor Boulevard, we finally reach our destination, Disneyland.
All right. We can have the control of the sound and right in where it's but we've always wondered, like, how did we get these great aerial shots? So we're getting a chance here to see everybody boarding the good old Goodyear Blimp. And we're real quickly now going to go from the pre-opening footage that you've been seeing before we started the show. A little bit in what Winston showed you there. We're going to go quickly now.
Who wants to do this? I want to.
Yeah. I think this would still be a very good ride at Disney.
Yeah.
We need a film that comes up that has balloons in it where people fly away. Hey, I wonder what that might be. This is opening day, and look at the crowd. You know, you hear that there were a lot of counterfeit tickets, but the golden tickets actually you could write in how many people you wanted to bring in. And I have one on mine. It says Bill Treadwell and 69 close friends. So that's where the real problem happened, I think. So we had seen all this footage with Walton in black and white with the opening day ceremony, but it's kind of fun just to kind of revisit these scenes here. Now that was a dress rehearsal. You can see the Marine there, and kind of it was 100 degrees.
Yeah, too hot.
Yeah, he's in a rec uniform. Now this is fun because we've all seen Walt pulling into the station, but here's where he was, I think, taking the ride for the first time from the roundhouse in the back. The original roundhouse is still there. It's another paint shop. But this is the, spur that took it right out of the main line, right behind the dry river bed there. Here we are, first day, first ticket. At least he thinks the first ticket is his. I think the first ticket is upstairs in the archive exhibit.
Yeah, Royal.
Yeah. So here's the first kids, which we've seen, and they've been back for. Now this is actually on the same time, the same day that people were in the park. So that They finished the front side, but the back side was don't fall in. Yeah, I like the handrails on the path. And as you look at the streets and everything, they didn't know that they were going to need to sweep the streets and everything. They found that out after opening. So you'll see a little bit of trash and stuff that, was sort of the oops, had to take care of that. This is a rehearsal for the opening of Frontierland, because once they went live in the big part of the afternoon, I think it started at 4 o'clock, people were let in at 2. So in the morning and up till 2 o'clock, they were doing rehearsals to get all the pacing right. So now we're switching a little bit to some of the early rides. And when you hear that Disneyland was done for $17 million, you understand why. It was all animal powered for the most part. And truly, when they say that Bill Evans, the landscape guru, planted weeds, it was not too far off from the truth in some of these shots. You can see that it's pretty raw. In the pre-show, you may have seen Storybook Land, and I think now as you look down at the mule ride down there, it looks a little bit like a current construction job out in Hills. The colors are amazing. Yeah. Now these were all locked away, and Ed and his crew over there found them when they were about to be assigned to the vaults. And they called a few of us, and we looked at it and could not believe what was actually found there. Now we're coming down into the Indian village, and not only did we have 17 tribes here performing, but Walt was always quick to work a bargain, so he said, we'll let you perform there, but you've got to build your own facility. I mean, they made a show out of it. It must have been fun to watch the construction of these homes. I remember there's actually one little building out in Critter Country that remains from this era, and that's at the Briar Patch shop. And we worked very hard to save that, because I was like, have something that's around from the early days. So that was there. Now we're up to almost 1958, with the delivery of the Columbia Hall from, I think, Long Beach, where it was constructed. And while that's metal, of course, the exterior is 100% wood and teak and everything. So once that arrived in Fowler's Harbor, which pretty much, you'll see shots in here, when you look at the buildings in the back behind the ship there, you'll see it's pretty much exactly the same today. But the next task was to literally disguise that metal hull with wood and create the wooden masquerade. There's a master shipbuilder that you're going to see throughout this by the name of Ray Wallace. And Ray's family is still in the business down in Long Beach area. And they maintain all the rigging, everything in Disneyland, not just the ship, but the tree house, anything where we used netting and so forth. This guy loved it. I mean, he was an executive. He was well off. They had their own private architectural firm. But if you could put him up in rigging and have him tie knots, that was what he loved to do. Kurt Kim Irvine and I got to work with him way later on. We were going back in on the Columbia with some work. And his company continually comes out to refresh the boat when it goes down for its rehabs. Jim is his son, and they're a family dynasty at doing this. And look at there's no tie-off harness there. The higher he could get, the more exciting it was. Now we're on opening day. Unfortunately, Ed was the guy that found out all the statistics on this. So if somebody is a true Disney, fan here, they know who the Admiral's wife there was. Of course, that's Joe Fowler. But I think they brought in the name of the Admiral and his wife to christen the boat. Now we're on the other side of the park. This is the start of the submarine lagoon. And what those guys are building is huge walls that form the 15-foot cavern edges that you travel through in the submarine ride. Now, nothing had ever been done like this. And for me, I was 12 years old when this all happened. It was like, this was where I changed my plan of what I was going to do for a living. The submarine ride and the Matterhorn were just absolutely, took Disneyland up a notch from those Conestoga wagons and horses and things that the park opened with. Because of the structure of this site, you've got monorails. These are the sub-casings for the monorail beams that would go down below the lagoon. And if you understand the topography of Anaheim, it's all on an aquifer. It's kind of a sandy soil area. So you can, oh, now this is my favorite. To keep that submarine open, or to keep the Skyway open, look what they did. They put it up on 2x4s. So the original dirt was up there in the air. And guess and they were riding on it. I can't believe that. You never saw that. You never saw that. We are a very safe organization. Okay, these guys are building the sets in the submarine lagoon. So those are the graveyard of the lost ships. You can see the rib cages there, the ships for the underwater thing. Really is the sculpting is done in what they call rebar. The metal there is covered with a metal lap. It's like a real coarse window screen, and that's covered. I love this painting. I'm not sure if it's Herbie. I'm sure it looks like a Herbie Ryman. You know, as a kid, you stand there at this, and it allows you to look over the fence and look at the construction. And we ride the train ride around the park. That's the lagoon. You can see the Matterhorn yacht bar. Awesome. The yacht bar, that's where Dwellin Terrace is. And that moved around a couple of times, actually. Monorail beam. We actually found a missing monorail beam when they expanded the loop to the hotel. They took one beam out, and we found out when we put in the October beam. It's interesting how they built this, because it was completely finished down to the halfway point. I think that was so they could play basketball up there while they were working on the rest of it. And again, you could ride the rides right through the construction site. So I loved the Autopia that year. Now there's the graveyard of ships model that Claude Coates did. Claude was my mentor. He was one of the greatest guys I've ever met here. He's a wonderful, wonderful man who loved to work with all his young kids. That's the track structure. The cement portion is over here, the arches, and they're about to put the metal railing on top of that for the submarine. Those wooden frames, skeleton pieces, are how they did the rock work on the Matterhorn. Instead of the steel, they used wood forms. I think we're about to get a ride. And I had this in my last one, but it was just so cool. Nobody would believe this, you know. I kept thinking, what if that thing stopped out there on the track? And there's absolutely no way to get the guy out of the.
You get it.
Yeah, no, you do it. You want. Here is truly the first line on the matter. I think this fellow is an executive from Arrow. Bob Kerr was here. You know what I'm saying? Look at that. Look at the track. It's just two rails on there. 80 feet up in the air. Yeah. And you have ridden on that track a million times since then. It's still in the same place. Now you can see how much taller those monorail columns look, because half of it is underwater. And they put rock work at the base where the water level is, so you only see like half of the length of that. But we sure got into it when we went in there for Finding Nemo. We had to uncover all of that portion and the height of those things. They're truly like 30 feet tall. The longest ones are up over the waterfalls, because they go down through the caverns and then down below the ground underneath that. They're about 45 feet tall. So now there's some interesting shots here once we get into the submarine. You guys cue to go up the ladder. That's why they didn't use the shots.
See, look, the top of it's finished, and look how much isn't.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? I mean, they went through all the steps. Now in this shot, you can see Dick Irvine is looking at us in the back behind the guy with the steel hat. And that's John Hitch. I believe we're going on the submarine ride for one of the first times, at least for the buyout on this. And notice the boat doesn't have a label on it, so it had to come to the name. The change in design from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to the atomic submarines by General Dynamics was, now there's a wave machine. There's a lot of Dick News stories about wave machines, but they never work. Is the one in DCA still working? I'm not sure. No? Yes? Again, safety first, folks. Anyway, I love the Matterhorn in the early days. It was open, so where those guys are walking around, that's where you came out at the top of the lift and you could look out over all of Disneyland. It's pointed at the hub. you do it, you could get your camera ready because the ride wasn't going fast yet and get a pretty shot. And here we are at the loading building. You know, Walt built there, did a film. Another safety shot. Do not do this at home. He got off the little cable car there and went over. So now we're at opening day in 1959. This truly was like a relaunch of Disneyland 4 years in. And literally every one of these rides was a groundbreaker. The first daily operating monorail in the United States. The Matterhorn, which was the first tubular steel coaster. And the submarine ride, to this day, is probably the only ride of its kind still operating in the Western Hemisphere. You have to go to Hawaii to ride on a submarine like that. And of course, the famous shot, which is
Those scissors, because they use those scissors later.
I know they keep using them over and over again. And you know, for Nixon Library, this is the #1 selling photograph over there at the Nixon Library. Number 2 is Elvis in the White House. Anyway, so they finally got through the early. And Bob has a great story about, now I don't know again the Admiral's wife there, but she had some cranky kids. We cut some footage of them just really causing a storm there before this thing. But Bob took Vice President out on the track. Secret Service got left behind in the station, and suddenly you realized if it stopped out there at the high point, there would be no way to get to it. So here comes the boat back from the first ride around the track. I think I saw that in black and white on TV. Now this is Mermaid. I heard about the mermaids, and yes indeed, there were mermaids. And they performed every day up through the early 60s. And you know, there's lots of rumors about why they're not there. The chlorine was really intense in here, and we heard that it really turned your hair to straw. And the other story, of course, was that guys would dare one another to jump in and swim out. But here is the contest at the hotel. So you're looking at vintage Disneyland Hotel, and this is the mermaid contest. And I understand that supervisors in the park drew straws to get to go over and
And they all showed up.
yeah, everybody showed
I mean, look
up.
at how many supervisors were
It's
there.
my day off, but I'll come in.
Yeah. Oh, you know, they're all in suits looking at
Yeah, they're not. Good guy in a suit. You just that can't bear to look. So first they had to prove they could swim. Then they had to get into the outfit. And it was form-fitting. So, you know, that guy was more than eager to get this job done right. Look, no, I'll help. More hands there. It's fun when you see them get down in there. It almost seems like instantly, it must be easier to swim with that tail because that's why fish are made that way, I guess. But watch how good she is with it immediately. You know, it works better than feet. What are those things? Feet. Tails. So, I think this is our last shot on the original stuff. So we're now going to switch over. And this is where Josh lost 2 nights of sleep. We're going to go into the 60s now. So you're going to see things that start in Easter Sunday of 1960 and go up to the opening of New Orleans, like around New Orleans.
Yeah.
67, around that era. So, are you ready? I can only talk 4 minutes, too, without anything running. So,
Go.
let's go. All right, so we're at Carnation Plaza, my alma mater, my first 3 years at Disney. And that is Betty Taylor performing an Easter Sunday show. And of course, it wouldn't be complete without her partner, Wally Bode. And for those of you who are lucky enough to be in the Sorcerer's Visual, wasn't that an incredible night over there? Things like balloons. And of course, he was doing things for balloons. And everyone's dressed for Easter Sunday. If you look at the crowd out in front with their bonnets and Disneyland, boy, Disneyland was a real special thing in those days. And people did dress up just normally. As you look at the crowds, you see that. It was a big deal. You know, we didn't have annual passes, so Mom and Dad saved every year. Now this is really fun. This is the Paper Boys, and they had a contest where on the flying saucers you had to put the paper in the right place. But this was kind of dull.
Yeah, that's not so fun there, because they're all just fighting to get the paper in the box. So now check out. Watch the guy paper papers. You gotta hit the target, or the gas. What's out there? And how many of those people were like aiming for Pete?
Just innocent fun, you know. Okay, we're up to 62 now, and Walt is taking the Mills family. That's Mary Mills, John Mills, and of course, his wonderful, fine Haley Mills, into the treehouse the day before opening. So, what is fun about this footage is watch how much Walt really enjoys this. When I got to see him in the park the year I was working here, he was always having fun out of the park. It was his toy. And this scene here, I just really love because it's what I would have wanted to do if I built a tree. I bet he spent a night in there looking out through that opening in the sky at the stars. Yeah. And of course, the tree leaves, if you look closely, were all red in those first years. It was gorgeous. But sunlight does an amazing thing with fugitive colors. That's what they call them. Red is one of them. And they instantly fade out to brown. So it was changed to green. But isn't that pretty? Green, gorgeous. And all of you that know Kevin Corcoran Lucci, watch this with Walt.
He was like, you know.
And that's the minister of Switzerland. What do they think of that? Okay, moving right along. The first Hollywood Trump figure that you went and saw was the marker bird out front, voiced by Wally Bode. And they thought nobody would go into the show, so they put this figure out in front. And people were mesmerized by it. And you know how wide the entrance to Adventureland is? It's about 12 feet. Well, you couldn't get into Adventureland because everybody stood there and watched this bird. So he didn't last very long, but we do have to tape. So next year, we're going to give you another night to work in dialogue.
I'll start now.
Look at the beauty of the jungle behind the scene of the Tahitian Terrace.
There goes a boat.
And the first Disneyland Denver in there was Trips on the Terrace. Well, maybe it was the second one. The third one, because there was one on Tom Sawyer Island. Third Disneyland. Okay, tree here with all the lighting for the Tahitian Terrace show. And the boat goes by in the background. One of my favorite places to eat. Keep those cars and letters coming. We're bringing you out the front half of the restaurant, this year will be the Mary Poppins Jolly Holiday Bakery. Bring it back. Okay, so we're going to move now to another part of the world, actually, going east here, I believe. New York. And the opening of Small World at the New York World Fair. I think in April. Somebody tell me the date. Was it the 12th or something like that? Now watch those balloons. I didn't get the idea for Figment from these balloons, but is that amazing? Maybe that's an omen. There's Figment in the sky. Bing, right there. And next we have Walt actually opening the Small World ride, which I don't think I've seen this footage ever before. And we found this just about 2 months ago.
Yeah.
We were doing all night. They are crazy about Disney. Yeah, here's Walt cutting the ribbon. Pete Doctor can do iTunes DJ.
This was, I'll just talk us a little bit. This was footage on the soundstage at the studio before Lincoln was called down to Disney. But we've used this in previous Lincoln presentations, and it's just amazing to see this figure so early on. The standing was amazing. We don't run through the whole show here.
But Josh, you synchronized it.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have the audio, so he was able to take the original tracks. Synchronize that. But the mirror was there so they could see how he was looking from every scene in the theater.
What's amazing is when he sits down, pay close attention to his hands, how they go on his animation was unbelievable.
Yeah, and you might wonder why didn't we do that? Well, in about a week at the World's Fair, his hands were his pants out, and he had two big torn holes, or threadbare.
Hey, look at that.
Yeah, because it looks so great. So unfortunately, when you work from 8 in the morning till midnight trying the same thing all day long, it's going to be bad. Okay, now this is really fun. Here comes Rolly Crump and Walt Disney to look at a cardboard version of Small World. And I don't know why we don't do this today, because what a great way to get the scale and everything right. So you're going to see them now standing. That's Rolly and Walt standing. Yeah, that's, oh, I think we're looking over towards where the fence is. And that's the Kurban in the background. Now kids, you're seeing people smoking here, but don't do that at home. It's not a good thing. At home, Fowler and Dick Nunes just casually walked in to get into the picture there. And Bill Evans. They all managed to crowd it. Now look at this. See, there's the logo here that just said presented by Bank of America. And the building with the trees that were, by mistake, put on the top of the building. That's all there. Just great. Now we're looking at the admin building. And that's Ron Dominguez's house in the foreground that we had as the admin center.
We're on top of the Matterhorn, right?
Yeah, we're on top of the Matterhorn. And this building is important because you know part of it from the dinosaurs that inhabit the middle of that building. So all those offices get to listen to all day long, depending on whose office you're in. So here they are being created in. And these had been in the New York World's Fair in the Ford Pavilion. And Walt had wanted for after the day. And Ford didn't come west. And the reason why is they had new Mustangs that you rode in at the New York World's Fair. And they suddenly realized every year we're going to have to trade all 48 of those vehicles out for new Mustangs because we wouldn't want to have last year's model. So they bowed out gracefully and then Walt put them on the train. It's funny, it didn't look like the T-Rex was painted, but clearly the Stegosaurus was painted. And that's security right there. When I had my bike stolen when I was 12, I had to sit for an hour in that building, which was really scary while your parents came out to pick you up. Not good. I was noticing that the crane was actually positioned in the picnic area. Now this is an aerial from the Matterhorn again. Look at the Disneyland Hotel.
The monorail.
It's half constructed, so Hotel Disneyland is open, but the other part of it. Now we're looking down at the construction of New Orleans, which would put it in probably 66, because Walt's in it. There's that wonderful tree still in its box. And here comes Walt down the courtyard.
Even though there is a camera rolling, look at how much Walt does love the place. I mean, this isn't out in front of the guests. You pay close attention when you see the different shots. He's really invested in what's happening.
Now, here's what I want to know here. Yes, Walt? Yes. Then we're in the French Market. You can see the main city building in the back. This is inside the battle scene, so the ship would be right where that door is today. And so when we ride it next time, just imagine behind the boat there is the door. Now we're kind of getting into the prop dressing. It looks a little bit stagey here, so you think what you want about it, but it looks like, clearly the set was there and they just had the guy put those pieces in. Isn't this cool? And I love the color. It's great to see the color of the rock work because, see, who would have thought of doing bluish gray rocks? But the lighting in there plays off of that paint much better than it would if they painted them naturalistic with browns and warm tones. That's why it's just so mysterious and so magical down in there. Put the sails up on that. Who knows? The Wicked Winch. Wicked Winch. Okay. Yeah. Didn't they put it in the last part of the film? know? Okay. Roberta knows everything. Maybe we'll get you up here. So that's what I need is please call out if you see something there. Because I'm missing evidence. Isn't this great? Again, safety first. Just grab that burning hole. Who would have thought? I just thought they shoot cannonballs.
Okay, we have a cool shot coming up really quick. I'm going to freeze on it because ex Atencio, Waco Rogers, and Mark Davis were on the ship for opening day.
That we found.
You'll miss it, but I paused so you can see it. Right? See, there's X.
X.
Pause.
Wait,
wait.
Mark.
Mark.
Yeah. Isn't that great? Yeah. And here we have Wally Bogue leading the Rose up to the front door to smash it down.
Wearing the auctioneer's coat.
Yeah, he took the auctioneer's coat, and Alice was furious. And of course, the rest is history. It became the greatest ride that's ever been done. Little did those people know. And I love the outfits. I wanted to work that ride more than anything at Disneyland.
All right, so we know this. Here's the show. Now, we have a lot of footage of guests going through, and I chose this one in particular because, like, look at the back. What's going on?
What was the show that day? Maybe they were the show.
That's how we announce it.
Okay, so now you're up to, early in 67, out of the Matterhorn again. Wasn't it great that you got to go on rides that took you into the construction side? And here in the foreground is the Circle Vision building, which is now Buzz Lightyear Tower, or originally people knew it, and then the rocket jets, and now just a pretty thing to look at. But it was really thing. Okay. We're going to Carousel of Progress, America Sings, and Innovations, but we're not going to show you anything from Tomorrowland because that's going to be our next show. So you're just going to have to
So much more footage.
to the next D23.
Yeah, so we decided that's the next stopping point.
And so what I've got next, we have, it says in the brochure that we're going to talk about Walt Disney World. Well, I think there's not this footage because Walt Disney World was mostly after the advent of video, advent of video. And so video kind of deteriorates, so we haven't found as much. But there was a ride down there, and we had an opportunity last spring to do Destination D. And Steve Bagnini, who works at the archives, and Alex Williams, who works here at Disneyland, they are really dedicated young guys, and they put together a reconstruction of one of the most legendary rides that never happened, which was the Western River Expeditions. So we have an 8-minute, almost real-time ride-through of that ride to share with you this afternoon. So, we've got a few slides here to set it up, so let's start with a view of the master Imagineer and animator, and probably the best guy at staging setup, so you could read them with your eyes. You didn't have to hear the dialogue, you didn't have to get the gags. Mark Davis really could change a scene that knew everything we needed to know from his drawing. And if it animated, all the better, but it didn't need to. It's all there in the drawing. So we'll go on now. And this wonderful rendering was one of the few postcards that was ever made. I know Gary's here. They actually sold a postcard of a ride that never happened. The West River complex was quite ornate. It not only had the ride we're going to share with you today, but a lot of other rides on the surface of it, which I'll show you in a slide in a minute. But first, let's go on to look at another great player in this. This is an original Mary Blair. Mary and Mark, of course, worked together hand in hand on Small World, and they did was on the scale of Pirates of the Caribbean, just like the pirate ride on the boat, but much more like Small World in terms of the outrageous theatricality that only Mary could bring to it. Another one of Mary's, if you go to the next slide, is stuck. Oh, there it is. This was the cavern scene, and of course there was an attraction here in the Nature's Wonderland show, Rainbow Caverns, that Mary had done a riff on. Just imagine if this had actually happened. The next shot here is a model we found, and if you look closely at this, you can see a log flume ride. So there is the ancestor of Splash Mountain. There's also a train ride, which is the ancestor of Big Thunder Mountain. And Thunder Mesa was the complex itself. So when it was decided not to do the entire thing and build pirates instead for Florida, I took the word thunder and combined it with Big Thunder to create Big Thunder Mountain, which was part of this. There's also a maze, and the donkey, the mule ride, was on the top of that. So literally there were 5 attractions. And God only knows what that rainbow desert, Jamaican desert is at the top. I have no idea. We can't figure that one out. But I guess if you were in the Goodyear blimp, you could see that. So let's go down. Now this is an amazing key piece because I found this. Nobody knew what it was, but it is an interior model, and it allowed Stephen and Alex to, we worked together and figured out how these scenes you're going to see next actually occurred in the order. And the big missing puzzle piece was the bluish and yellowish piece at the top. That was not part of the ride, and that's what kept throwing us, because you can see the train track piercing the middle of that. And that scene out there was constructed as something that the train would view, and only the train. The reddish box and the blue and reddish box were the actual ride. Once we figured that out, there's just a small linkage below the black bar that got you from the front building to the back building, and that. Those are the elements of the prize ride that I take you on now. All right, here we go. So this has audio, but please let us talk too so we can fill you in. But like all the great Disney mega E rides, it started in a cavern.
Yeah, the story beats are very similar to Pirate Games.
It was originally thought that taking a western to the east would be as exciting as taking an eastern Pirates of the Caribbean to the west. So that's why Mark created this, to bring the west east. But they were also mad down there, all the guests, when there was no pirate ride, that they made them build a pirate ride instead in Florida. So that was kind of the demise of Western River Ride. But as you moved into this caverns, you could begin to see shapes and forms in the various stalactites and formations there. We kind of preceded or anticipated what you see later in the ride. This is the first panorama shot, and from this point on now we're going to drop down in. You're going to get pretty much by the beat ride through. Now this scene that opens it up did have an afterlife in the land pavilion in Epcot, so a little bit of this has found its way into various shows, which you'll probably recognize. We thought that the music you're hearing, which is in Pickersville, would be an appropriate thing, so Stephen got it in there. Then it turned out that we found that footage there, just a brief bit of footage, where they actually did lay that in. Mark laid that in, so we were right on what they were thinking for this song. During this sequence. Again, perfect staging. Mark Rios' hallmark. Now this is the model. It was 1.5 inches to the foot, which means if you were a character in it, you'd be 9 inches tall if you were 6 feet high. So that is the biggest scale that we've ever done. And if I remember correctly, the model back in the early 70s was hundreds of thousands of dollars, which was incredible in those days. Again, this is from the footage that we did find a tiny bit of footage, very dark, but they had scored it to the song that you're hearing, so we guessed right, Mark. Now we're pulling into town, and again, this scene, I think Mark got a lot of this into World of Motion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we were not at a loss for this music, and for those of you that are Epcot fans, I think you might be able to detect where we got it from. So everything about this ride kind of had a parallel to the characters and the setups that you know and love from Pirates of the Caribbean. And we're trying to, give you a left side of the track, a right side of the track, so they're kind of in a sequence from left to right going through. Whereas if you were riding it, you'd be seeing both sides at the same time. You can see the staging. The reason that we still do models is, see, Mark set it up in the drawing this way, but when he got the model, he obviously saw ways in which he did improve that scene that he did in the drawing. You like that one? I want to put that on the train ride and take the dinosaurs out. I thought it would be really cool, like, what is it, and the Santa Fe from the Harvey Girls to do a big musical number as the train goes through. Medicine Man. We used him in Big Thunder in Florida, so we have a mixture wagon. It caused the flash flood. We have it. Now, as we turn the corner, if you imagine being in Pirates Valley where the guys and girls are chasing one another, you turn the corner and go to the burning city. That's about where we are in the progress of the ride at this point. We're enter into the shootout, which is going to set up in the finale. Get back to the other side of the street in that same scene. You got it. What's the prize?
To be free.
Well, you're not, we have to disqualify Roberta. Station knows what that song is from. Yep, great. Now the Indians start the storm in this scene, which then leads us into kind of a foreboding finale. I think they realized the fun part of Pirates, with the waterfalls at the beginning, really should be sequenced to the end. Because if you remember the TV show, Walt showed us the waterfall at the end of the pirate ride. It's kind of a cheat. But in the Western River, you went up the hill here in the storm, coming up to this raging storm at the top. Lightning, thunder. So lightning strikes the trees and the entire forest kind of bursts into flame here for the finale. come seek an adventure in cowboy country? Well, probably warn you be. And so what would of course happen at this point in the misty mist just beyond these guys was the biggest, longest, steepest waterfall in Walt Disney World to be. And down you went into the unload area so everybody could watch that, which would have been really fun. Now, you know, most of the things here, Disney is a company that we, of course, love all of you and all that, but we have to have advertisements occasionally to make these things work. So I found one, keeping in the spirit of Westerns and everything. This is really important for you kids out there because we need you to really work on your parents. So take heed here and let's roll with this commercial.
Say, kid, isn't this a swell picture of Davy Crockett? Here's all you have to do to get your copy free. Autographed by Bess Parker, star of the new Walt Disney Technicolor movie, Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. Just drop in at your nearest Hudson showroom with mother or dad, or both. Remember, mother or dad must be with you. You also get free 16-page comic book from the original Davy Crockett story. This is a special Walt Disney edition created exclusively for Hudson. Cannot be bought anywhere, and it's yours free along with the picture at your Hudson dealers. Now, when you're at your Hudson dealers, he will show your parents how they can win a trip for free to Disneyland Park, California, plus a new Hudson car. They can win the grand prize, trip for free to wonderful Disneyland Park, plus a Hudson Hollywood Custom V8, the most beautiful performer of them all. Or the second prize, the trip plus a Hudson Wasp Custom 4-door. Or maybe the trip plus a Rambler cross-country station wagon. Also, there are 27 additional prizes and trips for free, all expenses paid, in the Hudson Disneyland contest, which closes midnight, July 16th.
Wow. So did anybody win one? So I bring up the house lights because I think we're darn near now at the end of another incredible D23. And we really hope you've all enjoyed taking this journey on it. Go back into the history of Disneyland with us, a little bit of not Walt Disney World. But I had to sit here and listen. It was great. Great! Okay. He saved us. Actually, everything we saw there. Well, and if you like this kind of stuff, we can do it again because we only got you up to Tomorrowland, right? So all I can say right now is we can all go out, get in our Hudson cars, and head back home until next year. So let's leave Disneyland out to those gates, and thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Walt Disney Imagineering, thanks for joining us today in Stage 23. Please gather your personal belongings, watch your step as you exit through the doors on your left. Enjoy the rest of your stay here at the D23 Expo, and be sure to visit the Walt Disney Parks and Resorts exhibit